Welcome to CTD 202 Unit 3 Class 9 Printing with Stencils. The historical background and the tools and materials used in stencil printing were described in Lesson 7. The technique of cutting stencils and the different types of materials used for making good stencils were discussed in the previous lesson. In the present lesson, we will consider the methods and techniques of applying color on the stencils to produce satisfactory prints on a fabric or any other object to be ornamented. Objectives of today's class. After going through this lesson, you will be able to first stencil print a multicolored design onto a fabric. Second, use printing techniques like toothbrush printing, spray printing, or bring about shadow effect on printing. Third, work with new ideas of stencil like symmetric stencils, superimposed stencils, a negative stencil, or using masking tapes as stencils, shading effects, etc. Introduction of today's class. Printing is the final stage of the stencils are cut and the printing paste is ready. This can be carried out in several ways, incorporating different ideas and adapting different tools and equipment. By adding a little more creative, one can achieve novel effects through stencil printing. The broad spectrum of methods and the wide range of effects achieved using these methods will form the subject matter of this class today. Printing with stencils. A variety of dyes and pigments can be used for stencil printing, and a number of devices can be used to apply colors. The various types of colors and pigments used for stencil printing were described in Lesson 7. In this lesson, we will learn how the colors are applied to the stencil. Now, before we really start our work, there is a little activity which I would like all of you to do. Assemble the colors to start printing with stencils, and also the equipment to paint like cotton pad according to the color scheme you want to use. Assemble the colors to start printing with stencils, and also the equipment to paint like cotton pad according to the color scheme you want to use. Arrange for a waste toothbrush and other printing brushes. Arrange for a waste toothbrush and other printing brushes. After you have done this and taken a little break, let us start with how you are going to do printing by dabbing. To start with, the washed and ironed fabric is placed on a rigid support in a tight, stretched state and secured in this position with the help of pins. Then the stencil is placed at the appropriate location on the cloth. The stencil is secured with short lengths of masking tape or pins on the cloth to be printed. A small amount of print paste is taken in a saucer and a sponge or a cotton pad is dipped in it. The color is applied by gently but firmly dabbing or pressing repeatedly over the open sections of the stencil. By moving the piece of cotton or sponge firmly from outside the design outline towards the open areas. The stencil is then carefully removed. The masking tape can then be reused for the next positioning of the stencil. After the printing is over, the fabric is spread in the sun to let the prints dry. Printing with paintbrush. Beautiful designs can be stencil printed on a wooden object using paint. First, make sure that the surface is properly cleaned, otherwise the paint will not adhere to that surface. Now start printing. Following are the steps you have to do. First, fix the stencil at desired place with the help of adhesive tape. Step 2. Choose suitable paint and colors and start painting holding the ties. Third, the ornamented table will look beautiful with the printed stencil. Spray printing with stencil. Spraying can produce a range of effects from a crisp, clear-cut design to a freckled look or a delicately graduated, misty image. 3 methods of spraying are there. First, the first method employs an old toothbrush. The toothbrush is first wetted in paint or with the right consistency. With the help of a spatula or a scale or a knife, the paint is spattered on the stencil over the cloth. The second method makes use of mouth-blown diffuser. For the diffuser to work successfully, it will be necessary to thin the dye paste a little more than that used for toothbrush spattering. Third and finally, the more professional approach is to use an airbrush, which is also known as the flit gun, which you can buy from any general merchant store. An airbrush or the flit gun is more conveniently handled for giving misty effect to large printing areas. Now there are some questions for you to answer. Please write down the answers to these little questions. What is printing by dabbing? What is Printing by dabbing. Which paint will you apply to stencil print on a wooden surface? Which paint will you apply to stencil print on a wooden surface? Name the 3 methods of spray printing. Name the 3 methods of spray printing. Please write the answers, and towards the end of the lesson today, I will give you the answers for these questions. This will help you to self-check whether you are understanding the lessons properly. Now, new ideas for printing is the next topic for today. Multicolored designs with stencils. It is possible to use more than one color within stenciled shapes by gradually merging one with the other. But you must bear in mind whether the 2 colors will produce the required effect when they actually meet. Use a fresh piece of sponge or a cotton pad for each color and use it only for that color throughout the printing. Try printing your design in separate colors. If yours is a large-scale design, this is quite feasible with stencil printing. The gaps you are not printing should be covered with paper secured by masking tape. Printing with 2 or more superimposed stencils. More complicated colored designs can be printed by separating the color and making a stencil for each color. By using several stencils, one over the other, complicated designs can be produced without the insertion of too many ties in just a single stencil. When a number of superimposed stencils are to be used, allow the paint of the preceding stencil to dry completely before positioning the next stencil to print. Thus, with the use of 2 or more tactically designed stencils, beautiful multicolored patterns can be printed, keeping one over the other, one by one. Now, for our second activity today, cut out 2 stencils so that one can fit inside the other, and try to print them in 2 different colors, keeping one over the other. Making repeats. For printing of stencils on a fabric in a straight line or all over the surface of any other object, triangular holes are cut on the two diagonally opposite corners of the stencil. When the stencil is placed at the starting position, to make a print on the starting point of the repeating pattern, the holes cut at the corners are also marked with a chalk at that place on the cloth. After printing, the stencil is placed at the next position according to the chalk marks of the first position. The whole process is repeated for the consecutive prints. If the motifs are placed quite close to one another, it is advisable to print alternate ones, coming back to fill in the space when these first prints are dry. If your project requires repeating the same stencil in different colors, the registration of colors will be done by first placing the stencil for first color to be printed in its correct position on the fabric. In the same manner, repeat the same process for the next color. Now, for the third activity of today, print one stencil design in two different colors in a row on a border for a cotton sari or a dupatta. Print one stencil design in two different colors in a row on a border for a cotton sari or a dupatta. Shading effects in stencil. Try heavy color in the center of a shape fading out towards the outer edge. You can vary the textural quality of the print by using a coarser sponge or a ball of crumpled paper or cloth. Negative stencil designs. Till now, only positive stencil printing has been considered. Try out the negative stencil idea too, where you apply color around the shape, leaving the shape itself with the color of the fabric. You can use the pieces cut from the normal positive type of stencil as templates to develop an interesting design. Use a weight or double-sided tape to hold the template in position on the fabric when you print. Other easily made stencils. Instead of cutting out a shape, some hard objects can also be used as stencils. For example, leaves or petals of flowers. Masking tapes themselves can also be used strategically placed adjacent to create unique printed patterns. Now the second set of self-check questions. Define negative stencils. Define negative stencils. What do you mean by superimposed stencils? What do you mean by superimposed stencils. Precautions to be observed while printing. One should take care of the following points while printing with a stencil so as to speed up the process of printing and to reduce the printing errors to a great extent. Apply the paint with almost a dry brush. Dry it by dabbing it to remove the excessive paint. Keep the stencil pressed with a free hand while printing. Start with the brush or the cotton pad or the sponge at the center of the painting area first. Always apply paint from outside into the middle of each open area. When painting near a tie, the tie should be kept pressed with a sharp object. Summing up, in this lesson, a number of novel adaptations of stencil printing technique have been illustrated. These include use of brushes to print, spray printing with the help of a toothbrush or a mouth blower diffuse, etc. Some new ideas for printing have been described. For example, producing multicolored designs with stencils, use of superimposed and negative stencils to create appropriate designs. Now, I had earlier in the lesson asked you 5 simple questions. Here are the answers. Please cross-check them with the answers you have written. First, the answer was: printing by dabbing is a method of passing paint through a stencil onto a fabric with the help of a cotton pad or a piece of sponge dipped in color by patting it gently over the open area of a stencil design. Printing by dabbing is a method of passing paint through a stencil onto a fabric with the help of a cotton pad or a piece of sponge dipped in color by patting it gently over the open area of a stencil design. Second, the enamel paints or even acrylic paints can be used for painting on wood. Second, the enamel paints or even acrylic paints can be used for painting on wood. Third, spray printing can be done with the help of first, a toothbrush, second, a mouth blown diffuser, third, or a conventional airbrush or a flit gun. Spray printing can be done with the help of first, a toothbrush, second, a mouth blown diffuser, third, or a conventional airbrush or a flit gun. Question number 4, rather the answer to the fourth question. A negative stencil is actually the cutout portion of a stencil while falls apart when a shape is cut through a thin sheet of material. A negative stencil is actually the cutout portion of a stencil while falls apart when a shape is cut through a thin sheet of material. Fifth, superimposed means some shapes which are cut out through a same sheet of material one after the other in ascending order of these sizes, so that every bigger size shape completely encloses or exactly covers the smaller ones, and all of them constitute a single design. Superimposed means some shapes which are cut out through a same sheet of material one after the other in ascending order of these sizes, so that every bigger size shape completely encloses or exactly covers the smaller ones, and all of them constitute a single design. Thank you.